Welcome to Soft Story Sleep. Tonight, a boring history for sleep about Harriet Tubman. You have heard her name before. You know she helped enslaved people escape. You know she was called Moses. You know there is a $20 bill with her face on it, or there was supposed to be. The printing schedule has been delayed. That is not important for this story. What is important is that Harriet Tubman was not a superhero. She was not larger than life. She was a small woman. She was probably about 5 feet tall. She had a severe head injury that caused seizures, headaches, and vivid dreams for her entire life. She could not read or write. She had no formal education. She had no army. She had no weapons, at least, not at first. And yet, she freed about 70 people from slavery. She made 13 trips back to the South after escaping herself. She never lost a single passenger. This is not a story about a mythical hero. This is a story about a real person who did extraordinary things because she had no other choice. Let us begin. Let us go back to the year 1822. Or thereabouts. The exact year is not known. We are in Dorchester County, Maryland. This is on the eastern shore of Maryland, near the Chesapeake Bay. The land is flat. The soil is sandy. The rivers are wide and slow. In the summer, the air is thick and hot. In the winter, the cold wind blows across the water and cuts through everything. This is where Harriet Tubman was born. Or rather, where Araminta Ross was born. She was called Minty as a child. She later changed her name to Harriet. She was born into slavery. Her parents were Benjamin Ross and Harriet Green. Both were enslaved. Neither could read or write. They lived in a small wooden cabin with a dirt floor. The cabin had one room. The whole family slept in that one room. There was no glass in the windows, just wooden shutters that let in the cold air. She was one of 9 children. Some sources say 11. The records are not clear. Enslaved people were not counted carefully. They were property. Their numbers mattered only to the people who owned them. When Araminta was about 5 years old, she was rented out to another family. This was common. Enslaved children were often rented out to other households. The children worked. The enslavers collected the money. The parents had no say in the matter. Her job was to take care of a baby. She was 5 years old. She was barely older than the baby she was supposed to care for. If the baby cried, she was whipped. If the baby was hungry, she was whipped. If the baby needed anything, and she did not provide it fast enough, she was whipped. She learned early that the world was not fair. She learned early that the people in charge did not care about her. She learned early that the only person she could rely on was herself. This is not a sad story. This is just the facts. This is how slavery worked. Enslaved children grew up knowing that they could be separated from their parents at any moment. They grew up knowing that they had no rights. They grew up knowing that their bodies were not their own. When she was a little older, she was sent into the fields to trap muskrats. Muskrats are small rodents that live in the marshes of the eastern shore. Their fur is valuable. Trapping muskrats was a common job for enslaved children. She would wade into the cold water at night. She would check the traps. She would remove the dead animals. She would reset the traps. Then she would do it again the next night. She also worked as a weaver. She would sit at a loom for hours, weaving cloth. The work was repetitive. The work was boring. The work hurt her back and her hands. She also worked as a cook. She would prepare meals for the family that owned her. She would stand over a hot stove for hours, stirring pots, chopping vegetables, baking bread. She also worked as a woodcutter. She would take an axe into the forest and cut down trees. She would chop the wood into logs. She would stack the logs. She would do this all day. She did whatever she was told. If she did not work fast enough, she was beaten. If she complained, she was beaten. If she tried to run away, she would be caught and beaten worse. This was her life. This was the life of every enslaved person in Maryland. This was normal. Not good. Not acceptable. Normal. When she was about 12 or 13 years old, something happened that changed her life. She was sent to a dry goods store. A dry goods store is a store that sells cloth, thread, buttons, and other household supplies. This store was run by a white man. He was not her enslaver. He was just a storekeeper. Another enslaved person was in the store. He was a man who had left his plantation without permission. He was trying to buy something, or maybe he was just hiding. The man's overseer followed him into the store. The overseer was a white man whose job was to control the enslaved people on the plantation. He carried a whip. He carried a gun. He had the authority to beat, chain, and punish anyone under his supervision. The overseer saw the man. He recognized him. He demanded that young Araminta help him restrain the man. She refused. She did not say why. She just refused. Maybe she did not want to hurt another enslaved person. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she just did not like the overseer. The overseer picked up a 2-pound weight from the counter and threw it at the man. The man dodged. The weight hit Araminta in the head instead. A 2-pound weight is about the size of a small apple. But it is not made of fruit. It is made of iron. Iron is heavy. Iron is hard. When iron hits bone at high speed, the bone breaks. She did not die. That is the first miracle. She did not lose her eyesight. That is the second miracle. She did not lose her ability to speak or walk or think. That is the third miracle. But she was never the same. For the rest of her life, she suffered from severe headaches. The headaches came without warning. They could last for hours. They could last for days. Nothing helped, not rest, not medicine, not prayer. The pain was always there, just beneath the surface, waiting to flare up. She also had seizures. A seizure is a sudden surge of electrical activity in the brain. It can cause a person to lose consciousness, to fall down, to shake uncontrollably. Harriet Tubman had seizures for the rest of her life. They came at random times. She could not predict them. She could not prevent them. She also had vivid dreams and visions. These were not ordinary dreams. She believed they were messages from God. She saw things that had not happened yet. She heard voices that told her what to do. Modern neurologists would say that her head injury damaged her brain in a way that caused these symptoms. They would say that she was not actually hearing from God, she was hearing from her own damaged brain. Harriet Tubman would disagree. She believed that God spoke to her directly. She believed that the visions were divine guidance. She believed that she was chosen for a purpose. Whether you believe that the visions were divine or neurological is up to you. Either way, the result is the same. She was certain that she was protected. She was certain that she had a mission. She was certain that she would succeed. Let us pause here for a moment. Not for breathing exercises. Not for affirmations. Just a pause. Silence. The story will continue in a few seconds. There is no need to visualize anything. There is no need to feel anything. Just listen. Or do not listen. You can fall asleep now if you want. That is the point of this channel. Here is a pause. We will continue now. She once said, "I grew up like a neglected weed, ignorant of liberty, having no experience of it. But I always had a notion that I would be free." That is an interesting phrase, a notion. Not a certainty. Not a plan. Not a promise from God. A notion. An idea. A small, persistent thought that would not go away. She did not know how she would become free. She did not know when. She did not know if she would live to see it. But she had a notion. That notion kept her alive. That notion kept her going. That notion told her that the life she was living was not the only life possible. She was about 22 years old when she married a free black man named John Tubman. John Tubman was not enslaved. He had been born free. He lived in a small house near the plantation where Harriet worked. He had a job. He had some money. He had freedom. Harriet took his last name. She changed her first name from Araminta to Harriet, after her mother. So she became Harriet Tubman. Her husband was free. She was not. This was a problem. If they had children, the children would be enslaved. The status of the child followed the status of the mother. Enslaved women gave birth to enslaved children. Free fathers did not matter. Also, Harriet could be sold away from her husband at any time. Her enslaver could decide to send her to another county, another state, another plantation. Her husband could not stop him. The law was on the side of the enslaver. And eventually, that is what happened. Let us move forward to 1849. Harriet Tubman is about 27 years old. Her enslaver, a man named Edward Brodess, dies. When an enslaver died, it was common for the enslaved people to be sold to settle the estate. The family needed money. The easiest way to get money was to sell the people they owned. Harriet knew she would be sold. She knew she would be separated from her husband. She knew she might be sent further south, to Georgia, to Alabama, to Mississippi, to the cotton and sugar plantations where the conditions were even worse than in Maryland. She decided to escape. She did not tell her husband. She later said that she did not tell him because he would have tried to stop her. He was free. He did not understand what it was like to be enslaved. He could not imagine the desperation she felt. She told only a few trusted people. They helped her. They gave her food. They gave her directions. They gave her the names of people who would hide her along the way. She left in the middle of the night. She walked. She had a map in her head. Not a paper map, a mental map. She had memorized the roads, the rivers, the forests, the swamps. She had been planning this escape for years. She knew that the distance from Maryland to Pennsylvania, a free state, was about 90 miles. That is like walking from New York City to Philadelphia. But not on sidewalks. Not on paved roads. Through woods and swamps. At night. In the dark. With no flashlight. With no compass. With no food. She walked at night because it was safer. Slave catchers were less active at night. The darkness was her friend. She could hide in the shadows. She hid during the day. She would find a cave, a thicket, a barn, a church. She would curl up and sleep. She would wait for night to come again. She had help along the way. There was a network of people, free black people and white Quakers, who had run away enslaved people in their homes, barns, and churches. They gave them food and directions. They sent them to the next safe house. This network was called the Underground Railroad. The name is misleading. There were no trains. There were no tracks. There were no engineers or conductors in the railroad sense. The names were code. Conductors were people who guided runaways. Passengers were the runaways themselves. Stations were safe houses. Station masters were the people who ran the safe houses. Harriet Tubman would become one of the most famous conductors. But on her first escape, she was just a passenger. She walked for days. She did not know if she would make it. She did not know if the people who said they would help her could be trusted. She knew that if she was caught, she would be beaten. She might be killed. She might be sold further south, where escape would be impossible. But she kept walking. She crossed rivers. She waded through swamps. She climbed over fences. She walked past farms and plantations. She heard dogs barking in the distance. She heard horses on the roads. She heard the voices of slave catchers looking for her. She kept walking. After what felt like an eternity, days, maybe weeks, she saw a sign. A sign that said, "Welcome to Pennsylvania." She had crossed the border. She was in a free state. She later said, "I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came up like gold through the trees, and I felt like I was in heaven." She was free. She was about 27 years old. She had been enslaved for 27 years. Now she was free. Most people who escaped slavery stayed in the North. They found work. They started families. They tried to forget what they had left behind. They had earned their freedom. They had the right to live their lives without fear. Harriet Tubman did not stay. She went back. She went back to Maryland. She went back to the place where she had been enslaved. She went back to the people who had beaten her, sold her, treated her like property. She went back not once. Not twice. 13 times. Each time, she risked her life. If she had been caught, she would have been returned to slavery. She would have been tortured. She would have been sold south. She knew all of this. She went anyway. Why? She said, "I had reasoned this out in my mind. there was one of two things I had a right to, liberty or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other. She had liberty. She could have stopped there. But she wanted others to have liberty too. She said, I was a stranger in a strange land. My father, my mother, my brothers, and sisters, and friends were in bondage. I could not be free while they were in slavery. That is why she went back. Let us pause here for a moment. Silence. The story will continue. On her first trip back, she went to get her niece and her niece's 2 children. Her niece's name was Keziah. She was about to be sold at auction. Harriet arrived in the middle of the night. She found Keziah and the children. She led them through the swamps to a boat. They rowed across the river to freedom. On her second trip, she went to get her brother and 2 other men. Her brother's name was Moses. Not to be confused with the biblical Moses. Just a coincidence. She led them north. They walked through the woods. They hid during the day. They traveled at night. They made it. On her third trip, she went to get her other brother and several others. Her other brother's name was Robert. She found him. She told him to come with her. He was scared. He did not want to leave his wife. Harriet convinced him. They walked north together. They made it. And so on. Over the course of 10 years, she made 13 trips. She brought about 70 people to freedom. Some sources say more. Some say less. The exact number is not important. What is important is that she never lost a single passenger. Not one. How did she do it? First, she planned carefully. She usually traveled in the winter. Why winter? Because the nights were longer. She had more hours of darkness to travel. Also, the slave catchers were less likely to be out in the cold. They preferred to stay by their fires. Harriet was willing to be cold. She was willing to be wet. She was willing to be miserable. She had been cold, wet, and miserable her whole life. A little more cold did not bother her. Second, she traveled at night. Darkness was her friend. The moon was her ally. The stars were her map. She could see in the dark. She had spent her whole life moving in the dark, sneaking to the woods to meet her husband, sneaking to the swamp to check her traps, sneaking to the barn to get extra food. The dark was not scary to her. The dark was home. Third, she stayed off the main roads. She moved through woods and swamps. She waded through rivers. She crawled through ditches. She took the paths that no one else would take. The slave catchers expected runaways to use the roads. Harriet did not use roads. She used the land itself. Fourth, she carried a gun. She rarely used it. She never shot anyone. But she carried it. She told her passengers that if anyone tried to turn back, she would shoot them. This sounds harsh. It sounds cruel. But she had a reason. If a passenger turned back, they would be caught. The slave catchers would torture them. They would ask where the others were going. The passenger would tell them. Then everyone else would be caught. One person's fear could get everyone killed. So she made a rule: you will be free or die. There is no turning back. She said, I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger. The gun was not for the slave catchers. The gun was for the passengers. It was a promise. It was a threat. It was a guarantee. She did not want to use it. She never had to use it. But her passengers believed that she would. And that belief kept them moving forward. Fifth, she used songs as code. The people on the plantations did not know that the songs meant something. They thought the enslaved people were just singing. They thought the songs were about heaven and Jesus and the afterlife. But the songs had hidden meanings. For example, Go Down, Moses, Way Down in Egypt's Land, was a song about Moses leading the Israelites out of slavery. The enslaved people in Maryland knew that Moses meant Harriet. When they sang about Moses, they were singing about her. Follow the Drinking Gourd was a song about the North Star. The Big Dipper constellation looks like a ladle or a drinking gourd. The two stars at the end of the dipper point to the North Star. The song told runaways how to navigate. Wade in the Water was a song about walking through rivers and streams to hide your scent from the dogs. Dogs cannot track a scent through water. If you wade in the water, the dogs lose your trail. The song was a warning and an instruction. The enslavers heard the songs. They did not understand them. They thought the enslaved people were just singing. They did not know that the songs were maps. They did not know that the songs were instructions. They did not know that the songs were weapons. Sixth, she used her seizures to her advantage. This sounds strange. A seizure is a disability. It makes life harder. But Harriet turned her disability into an advantage. When slave catchers came looking for her, she would sometimes have a seizure. She would fall to the ground. She would shake. She would foam at the mouth. The slave catchers thought she was insane. They thought she was possessed. They thought she was dangerous. They did not want to deal with a crazy person. They left her alone. Her seizures looked like a weakness. But they were a strength. They made her seem unpredictable. They made her seem unstable. They made the slave catchers afraid. She used their fear against them. She also used her visions. She told her passengers that God spoke to her. She told them that God had shown her the way. She told them that God had promised that they would be safe. Her passengers believed her. They had seen her have seizures. They had seen her fall into trances. They had seen her eyes roll back in her head. They believed that she was touched by God. Her head injury, the thing that should have ruined her, became the source of her authority. Her disability became her power. Let us pause here for a moment. Silence. The story will continue. Seventh, she had help. She did not do it alone. There was a network of people, free black people, white Quakers, former runaways, who provided safe houses, food, clothing, money, and transportation. Without them, she could not have done it. She was brave. She was determined. She was resourceful. But she needed places to hide. She needed people to feed her. She needed people to give her directions. The Underground Railroad was a network of ordinary people. They were farmers, shopkeepers, preachers, teachers. They were not famous. They were not rich. They were not powerful. They just believed that slavery was wrong. They risked their homes, their families, their freedom, and their lives to help strangers. If they were caught, they would be fined. They would be imprisoned. They would be beaten. Some were killed. They did it anyway. Harriet Tubman was the face of the Underground Railroad. But she was not the only one. There were hundreds of people, thousands, maybe, who helped runaways escape. Their names are mostly forgotten. Their stories are mostly lost. But they mattered. One of her most famous trips was the rescue of her elderly parents. Her father was about 70 years old. Her mother was about 60. They were too old to walk 90 miles through the woods. Their bodies were worn out from a lifetime of labor. Their joints ached. Their backs were bent. Their feet were cracked and scarred. Harriet could not make them walk. So she found a wagon. She hitched a horse to the wagon. She put her parents in the wagon. She covered them with blankets. She drove them north. The trip took days. The roads were rough. The weather was cold. The slave catchers were everywhere. But she kept driving. She crossed into Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania was not safe enough. The Fugitive Slave Law of 1850 made it legal to capture escaped enslaved people even in free states. The law required citizens to help capture runaways. It punished people who helped runaways escape. So Harriet kept driving. She drove all the way to Canada. Canada was truly free. The British had abolished slavery in 1833. The American slave catchers had no authority there. The Canadian government would not send runaways back. She settled her parents in a small house in Ontario. They lived there for the rest of their lives. Her mother died in 1880. Her father died in 1881. They died free. Not all of her rescues were as successful as she hoped. One of her brothers refused to leave. He had a wife. He had children. He did not want to leave them behind. He did not want to be separated from his family. Harriet respected his decision. She did not force him. She did not shame him. She understood that freedom was not the only thing that mattered. Family mattered too. She left without him. Another time, she tried to rescue a woman who was chained to her bed. The woman had been chained because she had tried to escape before. Her enslaver did not want her to try again. Harriet found her in the dark. She saw the chains. She tried to break them. She could not. The chains were too strong. The locks were too heavy. She had to leave her behind. She never forgot that woman. She talked about her for the rest of her life. She would tell the story over and over. She would say, "I could have saved her. I should have saved her. But I could not break the chains." She carried that guilt with her always. It was one of the few regrets she had. When the Civil War began in 1861, Harriet Tubman wanted to help. She was about 39 years old. She was still having seizures. She still had headaches. She still had visions. But she wanted to fight. The Union Army did not accept women as soldiers. Women were not allowed to fight. That was the rule. Harriet did not care about the rule. She found other ways to help. First, she worked as a nurse. She treated sick and wounded soldiers. She used her knowledge of herbal medicine, knowledge she had learned from her mother and from other enslaved women, to treat diseases like dysentery and smallpox. She also treated soldiers who had been wounded in battle. She bandaged their wounds. She gave them water. She held their hands while they died. She was good at this. She did not faint at the sight of blood. She did not get queasy at the smell of infection. She had seen worse. She had lived through worse. Second, she worked as a spy. The Union Army sent her behind Confederate lines. She dressed in old clothes. She pretended to be a simple-minded old woman. She walked through Confederate camps and towns. She listened. She watched. She remembered. She recruited former enslaved people to gather intelligence. They told her about Confederate troop movements. They told her about supply lines. They told her about fortifications. She passed this information to Union officers. They used it to plan their attacks. She was good at this too. She was small. She did not look threatening. She knew the terrain. She could move quietly through the woods. She could interpret the songs that the enslaved people sang, songs that contained coded information. The Confederate officers never suspected her. They saw an old black woman. They did not see a spy. They underestimated her. That was their mistake. Her most famous military operation was the Combahee River Raid in June 1863. She was about 41 years old. She was working for the Union Army as a scout and spy. She had been gathering intelligence about the Combahee River in South Carolina. The Combahee River was a major route for Confederate supplies. The Confederates used the river to transport rice and other goods. The Union wanted to cut off that supply line. Harriet led a group of about 150 black Union soldiers up the Combahee River. They had 3 gunboats. The gunboats were armed with cannons. The cannons could fire explosive shells. They traveled at night. The moon was dim. The water was dark. The Confederate soldiers on the shore did not see them coming. At dawn, they attacked. They destroyed Confederate supply depots. They burned mills and plantations. They confiscated thousands of dollars worth of food and supplies. They freed about 750 enslaved people. Harriet Tubman was the first woman to lead an armed military raid in United States history. She was proud of this. She talked about it for the rest of her life. She said, "We were the first black troops to go into battle. We showed them what we could do." After the war, she returned to her home in Auburn, New York. She had bought a small property there before the war. The property was about 7 acres. She lived in a small brick house with her elderly parents and other family members. She was not rich. She was not famous, not yet. She struggled to get a pension from the government for her service during the war. She applied for a pension. She was denied. She applied again. She was denied again. She applied again and again and again. The government did not believe that a woman could have done what she did. They did not believe that she had led a raid. They did not believe that she had worked as a spy. They did not believe that she had served her country. She finally received a small pension in the 1890s. It was $8 per month. $8. That is about $250 in today's money. For a lifetime of service. For risking her life over and over. She did not complain. She took the money. She used it to help others. She died in 1913. She was about 91 years old. No one knows the exact date of her birth, so no one knows her exact age. She died of pneumonia. Her last words were, "I go to prepare a place for you." These are the same words that Jesus said to his disciples. She was quoting the Bible. She was telling her friends and family that she was going to heaven. She was telling them that she would see them again. She was buried with military honors at Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn, New York. The ceremony was simple. The crowd was large. She was honored as a hero. But she did not get the recognition she deserved during her lifetime. She got it after she died. That is often the way. People are recognized too late. The honors come after they are gone. The statues are built after they cannot see them. The $20 bills are printed after they cannot spend them. Harriet Tubman did not write a memoir. She could not write. Her story was recorded by others who interviewed her. The first biography was written by Sarah Bradford. It was published in 1869. The title was Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman. The second biography was also written by Sarah Bradford. It was published in 1886. The title was Harriet Tubman, the Moses of Her People. These books are not completely reliable. Bradford was not a historian. She was a writer. She wrote the books to help Harriet raise money. She exaggerated some stories. She made some mistakes. She left out some details. But the core facts are not disputed. Harriet Tubman was born into slavery. She escaped. She went back 13 times. She freed about 70 people. She never lost anyone. She worked as a spy and a nurse and a soldier during the Civil War. She lived to be an old woman. She died surrounded by family. What made her different? She was not stronger than other enslaved people. She was not smarter. She was not luckier. She was more determined. She had a head injury that would have disabled most people. She had seizures that would have made most people give up. She had headaches that would have made most people stay in bed. She did not give up. She did not stay in bed. She kept going. She said, "I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." That is her legacy. A train that stayed on the track. Passengers who reached their destination. She did not do it for money. She did not do it for fame. She did it because she believed that slavery was wrong and that God wanted her to fight against it. Whether you believe in God or not, you can admire her conviction. She believed something deeply. She acted on that belief. She risked everything for that belief. And she succeeded. She is on the $20 bill now. Or she will be. The Treasury Department announced the change in 2016. The bill was supposed to be released in 2020. It has been delayed. It will probably be released eventually. But she does not need a $20 bill. She does not need a statue. She does not need a holiday. She needs us to remember what she did. She needs us to learn from her example. She was a small woman with a head injury. She could not read. She could not write. She had no money. She had no power. She had no army. And yet, she changed the world. Not because she was special. Because she was determined. You do not need to be special to change the world. You just need to be determined. You just need to keep going. You just need to refuse to give up. That is the lesson of Harriet Tubman. Now, we are almost at the end of tonight's boring history for sleep. Harriet Tubman died in 1913. That is more than 100 years ago. The world she lived in is gone. Slavery is illegal. Black people can vote. Black people can go to school. Black people can be president. But not everything is fixed. Racism still exists. Inequality still exists. The effects of slavery are still with us. Harriet Tubman would not be surprised by this. She knew that freedom was not the end. She knew that freedom was the beginning. After she escaped, she kept fighting. She never stopped. She fought for women's suffrage. She fought for the elderly. She fought for the poor. She fought until her body would not let her fight anymore. She did not live to see women get the right to vote. That happened in 1920, 7 years after she died. But she would have been happy. She would have said, "I told you so." Now, close your eyes. If they are not already closed, close them now. The story is over. You do not need to remember the dates. You do not need to remember the names of the people she rescued. You do not need to remember how many trips she made. Just remember this: a small woman with a head injury walked 90 miles to freedom. Then she walked back. And back. And back. 13 times. She did not do it because she was strong. She did it because she had no other choice. You have choices. You have more choices than Harriet Tubman ever had. You can choose to rest tonight. You can choose to let go of your worries. You can choose to sleep. That is not a small thing. That is a gift she never had. The sun will rise tomorrow. The birds will sing. The world will keep turning. You do not need to do anything tonight. You just need to rest. Harriet Tubman rested when she was old. She sat on her porch. She watched the sun set. She listened to the birds. She knew that she had done enough. You have done enough too. You have done enough for today. You have done enough for this week. You have done enough for this year. You can rest now. Good night. Sleep well.